Good morning, good afternoon. I get to say good morning because it's morning for you, even though it's afternoon on my time.
Yes, it is.
It is morning. I thank you for getting up early to be with me.
No
So
problem.
we're gonna give it a few minutes for people to join, and then I'm gonna get started with our discussion. Again, thank you for being here. Um, Happy to be able to be in conversation with you today.
Yes, me too.
My dog, I swear, she is like a bad 3-year-old. Every time she knows I'm over here busy, I see her doing something she's not supposed to be
Not
doing.
supposed to be doing.
Yes.
Yep.
And she'll go right out of reach so she can do whatever it is. That's okay. Nina, I
Mm-hmm.
see you. She's looking like, oh, I see you. All right. We are going to get started in just a moment. I try to give folks time to join. If we don't have anybody that's here, we're going to get started in this conversation. We're going to let them catch up on the replay because I know you have stuff to do. I have stuff to do. It is Sunday. We can relax.
Yep.
Um, so it is Sunday. It is May 1st. Welcome to May. May 1st. This year is rolling by.
Ooh,
Oh
too
my
quickly.
goodness. Exactly. So good morning or good afternoon, wherever you are located. My name is Jewel Pearson, and this is Miss Bohemian Soul TV. This is the Creating Home, a tiny house series, and this segment is the conversations on intimate spaces. And every Sunday, I offer live content, and so I am alternating between the conversations that we're about to have and what's your question, where I answer frequently asked tiny house questions. To introduce myself, I built a kind of fancy tiny house in 2015. And since that time, I have shared my journey to hopefully inspire others who are interested in the movement. And I'm supposed to be sharing a slide. One day I'm going to get to all of this doing this, all of this technology, and it's going to be really easy. So here it is. There's my slide. Since I built my tiny house in 2015, I have shared my journey to hopefully inspire others who are interested in the movement. I offer coaching, consultations, and workshops to help others in their tiny house journey, and I serve up a lot of representation in the movement along the way. It is my intent to build figurative and literal community that is accessible and inclusive. And if you find this information in the video helpful, I ask that you please like it, that you share it, that you subscribe to my channel, and then also turn on the notification so that you'll know when content is available. So this again is the Conversations on Intimate Spaces. And my guest today, I am going to allow you to introduce yourself. Let me get the right screen here. There we go.
Hi, my name is Zani with Off Grid Homestead Fam. We live off grid in New Mexico and we are building a homestead from scratch.
Absolutely. So I thank you, and we're going to get into the meat of that. Thank you very much for joining me this morning. Um, so before we even get started, because I saw this post on your page the other day, and I said, this is how we're going to start this conversation because clearly not everybody is aware of what being off grid means. So let's
Right.
talk about that. So give us the explanation of what off grid, and it was so funny to me when I realized people's understanding and awareness, like the primitiveness of what they felt like off grid should be, was just out there
Mm-hmm.
and totally blowing my mind. So
Right.
let's start with that. Talk about what being off grid is.
So off grid means supplying your own water, sewage, and power. It means not being connected to municipal or public utilities. Some people seem to get it confused with primitive living, which
Right.
means no technology when you're just solely living off the land. But that's not what off grid is. People want to make up their own definitions, but I go by the dictionary definition, which still people find a problem with it and tell me the dictionary definition is not correct. What
Oh
they
my
think it
God.
is what real off grid is. So
Okay.
it's very interesting, but It just means being self-sufficient with your power, your water, and your sewage.
And I feel like, I always say people get to define things for themselves. So here's the
Mhm.
dictionary standard of what it means. But if off grid means you want to be completely off grid, not in communication with, all of the
Mhm.
things that if you want to go the primitive lifestyle, have at it.
Yeah, have at it.
Have at it.
I'm not
But
doing it.
I'm with you. I'm with you. Like, so yeah, so I felt like that was just a good starting point to talk, to help guide our conversation,
Mhm.
and get people in touch with what you were going to be talking about. So share with our listeners now, and this is something that everybody should be familiar with, even from me as I talk about tiny house living and not kind of being in that gray area where I don't share all of my details for safety perspectives and just kind of
Mhm.
common sense reasons. So I just want to put that out there as well, that this is how we are operating this morning,
Mhm.
being very careful for not oversharing too much information. So I'll put that
Correct.
out there. Good morning, everybody. Thank you all for being there, for being here this morning. So, what is your distance to a major city, an airport? How remote are you?
So we're 3 hours from an airport. We're an hour and a half from a major city. But we are about no, I'm sorry, we're 2 hours from a major city, but an hour and a half from a suburb where there's restaurants and Home Depot and Lowe's and regular things like that. In my
Okay.
town, actually in the town next to me, there is a small grocery store and there's a coffee shop and a couple other little things, but nothing really big. We don't have
Okay.
real restaurants around here that I like. So we might go to a restaurant once a month when we go into the suburbs to do our supply run.
Okay. And I noticed you said go into the suburbs. I'm going to have to adopt that. I am about 30 minutes outside of an area that has decent restaurants, and
Hmm.
it always makes me kind of ill when I say I'm going to town, because I feel like, oh my God, I have stepped into Laura Ingalls' Little House on the Prairie. I'm going to
Yes,
town.
me too. It's so strange.
So I'm going to adopt going to the suburbs. I like that. It sounds a little more bougie. I like that.
Right, right, right.
Okay, so um, before we look at pictures of your homestead, in your bio, you shared that this was something that you and your husband had wanted to do for a while, and that
Hmm.
there had been years of prep and research.
Yes.
Let's talk about that. Like, what was your impetus that, and prior to when you all decided to do it, what was the impetus as you all have been researching it years ahead of time? What was the thinking then, and
So
why?
I always have this feeling like society is not going to sustain the way it is. There might be some factor that throws everything off, kind of like the pandemic did that we weren't expecting, but maybe something worse where you won't have control and you need to be able to fend for yourself and to supply everything for yourself. So I always wanted to be prepared. Even before we moved off grid, I had food, I had water saved up. I had all kinds of different things that we might need: flashlights, bug out bags, which are bags that you create, and just in case something happens and you have to leave your home quickly. So I always had that feeling, and because of that, I started looking into off-grid living years and years and years ago before it was a fad or it was
Okay.
trendy.
Okay.
And I wanted to be able to supply my own power so nobody can shut it off, either for non-payment or for blackouts or for
Right.
any possible issues that there might be.
Right.
Being in Atlanta, we occasionally have boil water advisories where the
Mm-hmm.
water may be contaminated and they want you to boil your water. I wanted to
Right.
be able to have my own water source, that I don't have to worry as much about.
Makes
So
sense.
it's all about being more self sufficient. And no matter what happens in society, that me and my family will be okay. that we're going to thrive and we're going to survive.
Yeah, and that's a good point. Not just being okay, but you're also going to thrive and survive. Like not at
Mm-hmm.
the bare minimum. You've done the research and the
Right.
planning so that you're going to thrive, and that's a key thing to take note of, and that's absolutely smart.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so then the pandemic hits, and that's kind of what got you all on the road. But there
Right.
were so many unknowns at that time, and so
Yes.
many, often scary concerns. What was that feeling like for you, like when you all decided that this is it?
Well, I'm a registered nurse and I had been doing home health for years. And when the pandemic started, they told me that I could not wear a mask, that I was going to scare the patients.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And I was like, yeah, that's not coinciding with all the other information. So I have 100 hours of PTO. Let me go ahead and take that 100 hours of PTO. And my husband is a bit of a hypochondriac. So, he was stressing out about it. We had a motorsports business, we had an Airbnb that we were running on top of everything else. And we didn't know what the lockdowns were going to look like. Are they going to really force everybody to stay in their houses? Are you not going to be able to leave the city? We just didn't know how bad it was going to get.
Mm-hmm.
So within 3 days, we traded in our car for a truck. We got a travel trailer. We bought even more food. We stocked it up, and within 3 days, we were gone. We just got on the road and drove towards New Mexico because this is where he was raised.
Okay. The feeling at that time, was it like in the back of your head, are you thinking, okay, this is what we've been, even it's scary, but this is what we've been preparing for. This is what we knew was coming. Like, was there some calm, like this, this is the drill. This is what we've been practicing for. Did you have some calm and like a combination of fear and calm? Like what was that
It was
like?
more of a combination of, it's going to sound weird, calm and excitement.
Like
Excitement,
we get to do
knowing
this.
that we were prepared.
Yes.
Knowing that we were prepared, that we were in a position to get ourselves out, and that we were able to do that. So it was excitement because we called it a pandemic adventure. Just hitting the
Okay.
road. I had never really been in an RV before that.
Okay.
So this was like our first RV experience and pulling it across country. So it was just an exhilarating, exciting time. There was nobody really out and about. We were just like taking things as they come, which I've never been able to do as an adult, besides maybe a week of vacation. But just really being like, I don't know when we're coming back. I don't know what's going to happen, but we're going to have fun and we're going to have an adventure and we are going to make the best out of this.
Excellent. 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 So I'm sure that your son was like, okay, I can imagine as a kid, just this adventure and not understanding all the background stuff. I'm imagining that he was just ecstatic about this adventure.
Yes, he was. He was very ecstatic. However, I have a 19-year-old who wanted no
Okay.
parts of it.
Okay. Like
So even
deuces.
though even though school was closing down and they were doing the homeschooling thing, he still had the feeling like he was going to be able to hang out with his friends. Like he didn't want to miss anything. So he was like, "No, I'll see y'all later when y'all get back."
Okay. He was like, deuces, y'all, write, y'all text, send some pictures, but I'm not with
Right,
this. I'm not with this. That is
right, right, right.
hilarious. That's hilarious. Okay, I'm going to share some of the pictures that I acquired from your Instagram, and just want to kind of give some background into your homestead and your family and the work that you're doing out
Mm-hmm.
in your area. So, do you see the screen?
Yeah, I see it.
Okay, absolutely. Okay, good, great. All right, so this is your family,
Yep.
and okay, come on, thing. Removing. There we go. All right, greenhouse is
Yep.
this
That was
is
when we
in
first put it up.
this is just a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful picture. I love your picture. So now talk about you. So you have, is it 25 acres?
25 acres, yes. 25
25.
acres that's covered in sagebrush.
Oh, wow. Okay, and that's
Yeah,
how
we don't
I
have mount.
first, go
Go
ahead,
ahead.
I'm sorry.
No, go ahead. That's how
You
you
said
first
you don't
found
have
me, was with
what?
the sage.
Yes, that's
We don't have
exactly
any
how.
trees.
Okay. Yeah, that's exactly how I first found you. I think it was an ad for Sage that I found you. So now
Hmm.
you said your husband is from this area. When you were headed to this area, like what were your requirements for the land? And how did you go about deciding, where exactly you were going to be in that area and then and go into to acquiring the land?
So when we started the journey and we came out here, we didn't even have intentions of moving, buying land, or anything. We
Okay.
were just on an adventure. But once we got here, I started looking at land prices, and I was just blown away by how cheap everything is out here. In Atlanta, 10 acres, you could spend $100,000 on 10 acres.
Right.
Here, in some places, you can get an acre of land for $1,000.
Well,
So
I
we
can
we
see
initially
the
bought the
excitement.
Yep. So we initially bought 20 acres for $15,000. So you can't find that most places.
Right, right.
Um, and we were just looking. We just were going around New Mexico to different places, and we came to this parcel, and it was just absolutely beautiful. Just we can see 10 miles away. The landscape is just gorgeous. And the thing that really sold us was when we were looking at it, our cell phones rang. So most of the other properties we were looking at didn't have cell service, but this one did. So that one was kind of like, okay, that's a sign. We need to get this
Absolutely,
property.
absolutely. So now, was it just all vacant land and you all started these buildings, or or there any structures on the land?
No, it was just sagebrush, nothing
Just
else. We
sage.
had to clear the sagebrush. We cleared the driveway in about an acre where is our yard. We cleared that with the ATV, pulling out each individual brush with the ATV.
Oh, wow.
So it was definitely a labor of love. And
I
we
can
had a teeny
imagine.
RV, the one we had traveled over here with. That's all we had in the beginning.
Okay. And is that this picture here is one of
Yeah,
those,
that's the one in the back,
the one
the
in the
white one
back?
in the back.
Okay. And so
It's a
then since that
26-foot travel trailer.
Okay. And that's funny. You said
And the
you had a teeny one,
Yes.
and that was
Mhm.
the 28 feet is the length of my tiny house. So I could probably do that one as you're thinking about it.
Right, but
As
yours
ten.
is higher, so you have a whole nother level, right?
Oh yeah, yes, that's true. I have forgotten that. Yep. So
Yeah,
that does account for some
yeah.
extra
And it
space.
was me, my husband, our youngest son, and two large dogs. So it was tight.
Okay. Oh, okay. So then now you are starting to do some building here. And so this is
Right.
the newer RV, correct?
Yeah, so we purchased this one. It's a destination model, so it's really made to stay in one place. It's not meant to be pulled all over the place like regular RVs. So it's 40 foot long. It has two bedroom. It's very spacious and comfortable and more than enough space for us. However, we had to find a way to be able to use a wood stove because heating with propane all winter is extremely expensive. So
Got it.
my
Okay.
husband built, yeah, so this is the beginning of where he built a mud room onto the front of the RV because one of the other problems was when it's muddy, when it's rainy, you step in your RV and the
Yep.
mud is just everywhere.
Yep. I
You
can
can't even
relate to
leave your
that.
shoes outside. Yeah. So
I
this
can
mud
so
room
relate to
was
that.
Yep. So this mudroom was for us to be able to take off our shoes, hang our coats, and most importantly, have our wood stove that would keep us warm.
That's funny. The second time I moved my tiny house from when I was in the RV park and I moved it to a backyard, it was October,
Hmm.
and it seems like as soon as I moved my house, the rains hit and it just would not stop raining. And that was the same thing. And
Mm,
I hate mud, and so I was waiting for a
me too.
contractor to come out and give me a quote to build a front deck space so I could have that
Hmm.
same, buffer between me and the inside of the house. And
Right.
his schedule was booked, and that was the foray into me deciding that I could build a deck, and I did, and it turned out fabulously. So I built two. And so I understand mud is something else, and in a
Yeah,
tiny
it
space,
is.
it is the absolute worst. So
Yep.
this is the mud room coming together. So I had never heard of just a destination RV, but that makes sense. That it makes perfect
Mm-hmm.
sense.
So yeah, my husband built the whole thing by himself. He has some carpentry background, and he's a small engine mechanic, but he had never really built a structure from the ground up by himself.
Okay.
So he was very proud of himself. I'm very proud of him for building this for us. It's
I'm
really
sure
awesome. He
he
did a great
is.
job.
I'm sure he is. I always say it's badassery when you can look at something that you've imagined and a skill set that you didn't previously have or use, and then see it come to fruition. So that's a beautiful thing.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
All right, this is your greenhouse, and I love this
Mm-hmm.
picture. What are you growing here? Now this the sunflower. Your post there on that sunflower that was just determined not to be held back was
Right, right.
interesting.
It made its
That's,
way through the top.
I
So
refuse
last
to
year
be
we
held
grew a
back.
lot of greens. Last year we grew a lot of greens, but nothing really produced like we thought it was going to produce because we
Okay,
are at a very high altitude. We're at 7,500 feet above sea level. Um, it is the high desert. So even in the summertime, it'll be 80, 90 degrees during the day, but it might drop down to 40 or 30 at night.
oh
So
wow,
just being able to control those two temperatures to
oh
keep it
yeah,
warm enough at night and cool enough during the day has been our biggest issue. So our plants didn't do as well as we would have liked last year, but we made a lot of different tweaks this year. So hopefully it's going to do a lot better this year. Our
okay,
ultimate goal is to build a Wallapini, which is an underground geothermal greenhouse. And with those, you see that big hole next to it? That's
mm-hmm,
where the Wallapini is going to be. So with those, it can maintain a steady temperature year round because you're so low into the ground. That is about a 5 foot deep hole.
okay. Say what it's called again. A
A
wallapini.
Wallapini.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And that's basically where you're building underground to
Correct.
control the temperature.
Temperature. Mm-hmm.
Okay. All right. And how long did it take to build that big to dig out that big space?
Oh, we had a guy come out here and do it. It took him a couple hours, probably
Oh,
like
okay.
4 hours to do it with his huge excavator
I was just
machine.
getting ready to
So
say the benefit of having the proper tools. Where Jewel goes out last year, I had mulch delivered, and the mulch was as tall as my house, and I had a little bucket, and I distributed all of the mulch around the house. So I never have the proper tools. So I operate in the mindset of, okay, how long is this going to take? Because I probably
right,
won't have what I need. But he had the
right,
proper
right.
tools, and that's good. All right. This is the inside of that greenhouse space. Is that correct?
Yeah, so the last year, the first year, we just had short raised beds. They were really
Okay.
short, and our soil, they call it caliche. It's kind of like it's kind of like clay like, but it can be really hard. So we think part of the problem with our plants was they weren't able to dig deep enough. So we made
Okay.
large raised beds and we used the permaculture method where you're basically layering the raised beds like lasagna with organic matter. So at the bottom is like wood. So the wood breaks down over years and is creating
Mm-hmm.
nutrients for the soil.
And everything that you're using here, are you acquiring from around the property?
No, so most of the wood, we have a wood mill in the town next to us, and
Oh,
they
oh,
have a lot of extra scraps that they can't use.
okay.
So they'll let us come and get the scraps, and the scraps are what we use to make the raised beds. And they also have way more wood chips than they can manage. So they let us come and get free wood chips. So you have to figure out what's available near you and just go talk to people because we would have never known that we could get free wood and free wood chips.
Right. The power of connection. So this one,
Mm-hmm.
I I've used that tool,
Mm-hmm.
and it was just like an arm workout. So I love this picture
Right.
when I saw you using it. What is this when you were planting trees?
Yes, that's called an auger.
Mm-hmm.
And it digs the hole so you can put the trees or the fence posts or
Yep.
whatever you're doing in. So we planted a lot of trees. However, they all got eaten up by deer.
Okay.
So when we plant more trees, we're gonna have to fence off the entire area so the trees, I mean the deer can't get to the trees.
Guess the deer were like, "Oh, thank you for these snacks. We
Right.
appreciate you."
Yep.
And so you were out. This was still when you were building the trees. I mean, getting ready to plant the
Mm-hmm.
trees. How far?
Yep.
So we can see your homestead in the distance. How far out is this? About
So
from
I'm
you?
at the dirt road. So
Okay.
we made the driveway about a quarter mile long. So it's about a quarter mile from the dirt road to our homestead.
This view, I just imagine never gets old. I know
Oh, it
you
never
have
gets
been
old.
in Atlanta for a while, and I remember your post talking about how excited you were to be back home.
Yes. Because in Atlanta, there's nothing but trees. So you can't really see anything but trees. But like I said, on our land, we can see for 10 miles away. And people are always like, oh, I would never want to live there because, you don't have any trees. But if there were trees everywhere, we wouldn't have the beautiful views that we have. So
Yeah,
I'm happy. And not only that, trees are very expensive to clear. So I'm happy that there's no trees and we can strategically plant trees where we want them to be so it doesn't
right,
obstruct our view.
right. Yeah, my house is on an open field, and there I don't have any tree cover, so the wind that comes through here sometimes is a little scary, but I do appreciate the openness, so I can relate to that for sure. But
Yeah.
sometimes during the storms, I'm like, I wish I had a tree here, a couple of
Right?
trees.
Yeah,
So
me too.
I loved this picture because it is truly a family effort for the work that you guys are doing, and I think
Hmm.
that is important. So your son is involved in knowing what's going on and the why. I'm
Yes.
sure that is excellent.
He's learning so much from carpentry to mechanics. He's able to do things on his ATV and fix a little bit on his own. Um, he's the one who brings in all the firewood, so he knows which wood is which, how hot it burns, which one we should use at night. He's learning so many things that he would not have learned had we still been in our other life in the city.
Absolutely. I was getting ready to say the same thing. Like that's an education that he would not be able to have and you wouldn't be able to acquire. So that's a
Right.
beautiful thing. And this is the overview of your property, and it is just a gorgeous,
Yes.
gorgeous, gorgeous view. So now, is this a pool
Thank
that you
you.
have here? Is this a pool?
Yes, is my summer pool that I absolutely love. I spent a lot of time in that pool every summer. And it was a cheap buy and it was so worth it. I can't wait till I can put it back up this year.
I I bet. I bet. I keep thinking I want a little pool out here, but there's so many slithery things and all those other things.
Oh
It's like
yeah.
I'm a little scared there'll be something in there and then it'll ruin the whole experience. This is
So
gorgeous.
yeah, in
This
this
is
picture
cool.
you can see that we are really in the middle of nowhere. Like people really can't grasp when I tell them how far out in the middle of nowhere we are.
But it's a beautiful thing. And that's one of the reasons I wanted to include the picture because um, the vastness of the property and the openness and the beauty. I think that speaks to a lot of what it is that you're actually doing and the work and preparation that is going into to what you all are doing and the importance of that.
Hmm.
So thank you very much for walking us through and sharing that information with us. So going into you're there, you bought the property. Like what were the first things you had the first like few things that you had to put in place initially to get up and running?
So we had to put in a well so that we would have water. And then we got our septic right after that.
Okay.
And then right after that, we got our solar put in, because for the first almost 6 months, we were operating off of a generator, which isn't necessarily easy, especially when it's cold at night,
Hmm.
because the generator only holds so much gasoline. So in the middle of the night, my husband's waking up to put more gas in it because it's cold and the furnace has shut off.
Right, right.
So the water, the septic, and the electric were the first things that we did.
Okay. Okay. And so then you get the property. And so this was kind of the first trip was the exploratory trip. And then you bought property and then you're like, okay, we're doing this. And you
Right,
went home and handled everything and then you came back. So what was
right.
that adjustment like for you? Like um your initial thoughts in the beginning. Was there ever a point that you were like, what have I done? Like, or what are we doing?
No, no. And it's crazy because a lot of off-grid people will tell you it's so hard. I didn't, I got frustrated. I wanted to give it up. But no, I think the time we were traveling in the trailer, uh, in the beginning, just on our adventure, really prepared us, because we were staying in some places where we were doing boondocking or dry camping, where there's no water, there's no electricity, and you're just on somebody's property with hip camp, just fending for yourself. So that is what really prepared us. So we bought the land and then we rushed back to Atlanta to sell our house. So that is what the ability to sell our house and make a large amount of money profit off of it was what allowed us to set everything up.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, what about your son? So is he still on the adventure? Is he still in adventure mode, or has he gotten to any points where he's considered that this might not be what he wants to do, like the 19-year-old?
No, he loves it because I made sure that we had things in place to keep him entertained.
Okay.
So for a minute, my cousin and her daughter were out here. So he had a playmate for almost a year last year. But then
Okay.
they left. So I made sure he had a trampoline, that he has ATVs, that he has a bow and arrow to do. He's an artist, so he's always drawing. I have to make sure that he has lots of activities. So he really loves it. And especially because he goes back to Atlanta in the summer
Okay.
to hang
All
out.
right.
So
Okay.
he gets the best of both worlds.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I imagine at some point he's going to be just like you, where the time that you were in Atlanta and then you were like, I'm ready to get back home. I can
I'm ready to
imagine
get
that.
home.
Yeah, I can imagine at some
Mm-hmm.
point it's going to be like that for him, because the opportunity that he has out there is quite a bit different from city life.
Yeah, but
Um,
I also have to prepare myself for if he decides that he doesn't want this lifestyle. If he decides he wants to be in the city, like my oldest one, I have to prepare myself for that, because one of the biggest reasons that we're doing this is to create generational wealth and to leave this land to our children and my nieces and nephews, so they'll have something. They don't necessarily have to go the traditional route that society expects of us. They can come out here and just live freely and just make sure they have enough food and that they're taking care of everything without having all the pressure that society places on them. But I also, like I said, I have to remember they may not want it. It may just be one of them that wants it.
that was a question after the question I was just getting ready to ask, because I love that you always talk to the freedom and the flexibility of the lifestyle and building a legacy. Because I
Mm-hmm.
also speak to that, and I talked about it a lot in my tiny house, my living in luxury in a tiny house. The opportunity to live in a tiny house or pursue this lifestyle was for me about personal freedom and liberation. And then as I
Mm-hmm.
have grown in the movement, it has become about affordable housing and um, a quicker path to home ownership, and the necessity of
Right.
that for people in general, but also the necessity, especially for Black and Brown communities. And I talk about that
Mm-hmm.
often, how we're always left behind in the numbers for home ownership and achieving home ownership. And the American dream, and there's so many reasons behind why that is. But
Mm-hmm.
the work that you're doing and the conversations that we're having are so important to opening eyes and the awareness within our community for how do we do this? How do you build the legacy? How do you build generational wealth? And so I know that you offer, your workshops, and as you're sharing about this, let's talk a little bit more. So why is this so important to you to build a legacy for your family? Why is it so important for people to see that? And kind of, is this something that was instilled to you growing up, or is this just something, a realization in your adulthood that as the necessity for doing this work?
It's a realization in my adulthood because my parents are 70 and they're still working. The way everything is
Mm-hmm.
set up, it's almost impossible for most people to retire. And I didn't want that for myself. In addition to leaving something for our children, because that's part of the reason why people of color are left behind, is because we're not inheriting things. We're not getting the life insurance when mom and dad dies. We're not getting the land. And if we get the land, a lot of times we're selling it,
Absolutely.
so it's important to show people that, one, it can be done. Two, there's an alternative to the rat race that we're told is the American dream. And that, it's a good thing to leave property for your children, and another thing that I have to talk more about is putting your land into a vehicle where your children can't sell it.
Absolutely. Go
you
ahead.
know
Go ahead. Go ahead. Let's talk about that.
so
Absolutely.
putting it into a corporation, LLC, a trust, also so that your children aren't burdened with the inheritance taxes that come along when you're leaving something to them. And it's a lot of times in the Black community, we don't talk about things like that. You don't know how many times that I've tried to convince people of why they needed life insurance, and giving them options for very cheap life insurance, and they feel like they don't need it, not thinking about their children and how that will set them up for life sometimes.
Right. Right. Thank you. And that's an
Mm-hmm.
important conversation that we need to continue having over and over and
Mm-hmm.
over again. And it's one of the reasons, a big reason why I want to continue having these conversations, to show alternative lifestyles and people who are still living. One of the things that when you said earlier, thriving, the opportunity to thrive, so that it's just not all uh, hard work and we're showing us in the struggle, but there is some hard work, but there's a reason for doing this hard work, because we want to get to the point where we're thriving, we're setting up future generations for thriving and
Right.
changing the mindset, because that is so important. So um,
Mm-hmm.
yes, that is a very necessary conversation. Thank you. So one of the things that as I watch your work, and I think kind of threw me off when we first started talking, is that you shared that you're an antisocial introvert. I always,
Mm-hmm.
a friend of mine and I joke that I always say I'm an antisocial butterfly, because I'll be out, but I'm kind of always in the cut, like observing. So
Uh-huh.
most people don't know I am really introverted, and at some
Mm-hmm.
point I have to be in my own space and just kind of do my own thing.
Right.
So have you found with being as isolated as you are, have you found yourself having to work harder to stay connected to people?
No.
Okay.
Because I'm so introverted, I have a very small circle of friends,
Okay.
which I think is
Yes.
good when you get older,
Absolutely.
and my family. And it's easy staying in contact with them. But other than that, I don't crave or need additional relationships and friendships. It's just not how I'm built. So for me, this is great. However, if I was extroverted, there's still a community that I could be a part of. There's not many brown people in the community, but there's still a community that I could be a part of if I wanted to, but I choose not
Okay.
to.
Understood. Understood. I it's funny because I always have the comments because I am, like I said, I'm out on a farm and it is very isolated, not as isolated as you obviously, but there is nothing really around me. And I look at the comments of,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm a city girl, and I look at the comments of people who are saying, "Oh my God, I could never live like that." And I recognize that it requires being comfortable with yourself, being comfortable sometimes being in silence, being alone,
Yep.
and being okay with being in your thoughts and in your head. And not everybody
Mm-hmm.
is able is what I
No.
recognize. And so I there are some times where I feel like I'm a little disconnected, but for and I know that I could not have done where I am. I could not have done it 7 years ago as I was starting my journey because I needed to stay. And I have a very small circle, but staying connected to that small circle was a different.
Mm-hmm.
It was different for me at that time than it is now, and I'm quite okay with, the aloneness. Like it has been a a a, a big opportunity for growth, and I feel like people who haven't ever ventured out to in that alone space and being comfortable with themselves
Mm-hmm.
and just making that connection always see this as something that's not achievable for them, and there's so
Right.
much joy in this time that I think those people are missing out on.
But on the other hand, I am with my husband and my son 24/7. So I don't have much alone time. When they decide to go to the store together, I am so elated that I get, an hour to myself. So, and I've been a mother since I was 21, so I've never really had that alone time, so I do crave it.
I
I do
got you.
crave it. I love them, but what it also brings up is the importance if you're going to go off grid or if you're going to go to an isolated or remote area and you're in a relationship, you have to have a strong relationship. You have to really like each other because when there's not all that outside distraction and it's just the two of you, and you're working together to create something, I've seen it where it destroys relationships very, very easily and very quickly. So you
Yeah.
have to definitely be in a good place in your relationship before you even start and be well compatible.
Yeah, and have a good communication um practice set up. I know a lot
Mm-hmm.
of people in tiny houses, families and couples have shared going early on in the movement when people were saying, this is just a movement for single people. And then there were couples and families, and they were saying how it strengthened their relationship because, like you said, there weren't the outside distractions and they had to learn how to communicate better because there wasn't the opportunity to go on that side of the house or go in this room and shut the door and
Right.
that kind of stuff. Like you had to deal with what was right
Right.
there, and like you
Yep.
said, it's either going to make you or break you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, yeah, I get that. um your lifestyle, so you spoke about your parents still working at 70.
Mm-hmm.
The changes that you're making in your lifestyle and the legacy that you want to leave for your son and for your family. Talk about your value system and why this lifestyle is so important. Like how for you personally, like what is it that it just speaks to?
Well, when you have a 30-year mortgage, you're going to be paying for 30 years. And a lot of people refinance, they get second mortgages, and that puts you in a hole. When you're always getting the next car, the best car, that puts you in a financial hole that you don't even realize at the time. Our society is so comfortable with having debt that's one of the reasons why it's hard for people to retire, at an early age. But I'm 41, so we were 39 basically when we started. And the land, since it was so cheap, is paid off. The travel trailer is paid off. We don't live in a fancy house like we did, but everything is paid off, which should give us more financial freedom as we get older to continue to build and not be in debt and not have to work so hard. When you don't have a mortgage or rent, you don't have a water bill, you don't have electric bill, you don't have a sewage bill, that frees up a lot of your money where you
Absolutely.
don't have to work as much. because you don't have as many expenses.
Freedom and liberation. Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. What have you learned about yourself during this time, during this work that you're doing, during this journey?
Hmm. Uh, I don't know. I've always been an artist. I used to do a lot of painting. I stopped doing it for a while before we moved out here, just because the grind and the stress and everything else. And I've channeled that creativity into my Instagram, into the reels. And because I'm an introvert, I'm surprised at myself
Yeah,
that I'm
because
doing what I'm
I
doing.
would never, never, never see introvert in your reels. So
Right.
yes.
So I'm surprised that I'm putting myself out there, and when I first started doing the reels, it was very hard for me, just to even put my face on camera. So in Atlanta, when we had our motorsports business, I started an Instagram and I didn't want to show my face. So I had a kitten motorcycle helmet that I would
Okay.
wear on the whole page because, I just didn't want to put myself out there. I love anonymity. So I'm surprised that I'm able to do this. But what people don't understand about living off grid, you still need money. You
Right.
still have to have some sort of income.
Right.
It's
Right.
not like you don't need any money once everything is paid. You still need income. So I really started the IG to try to sell the sage. And it's just transformed into something I would have never thought it would have transformed to. I didn't think that so many people would be interested in, my life living off grid. I was just like, how can I sell some sage? I need to figure this out. And it
Okay.
turned into something way bigger. So I've just been flowing with it and figuring everything out as I go.
And so that's an outlet for the creativity that
Mm-hmm.
you did, a way to express that creativity that you
Yes.
um, are holding on to.
Mm-hmm.
Has there, so you said there, where do you see, you said there hasn't been a time where you felt like you wanted to do anything differently.
Mm-hmm.
And that's excellent. Um, where do you see like your long-term goals for where you want to be? We know it's the financial freedom and the legacy for
Mm-hmm.
your family. What is it that you're working on like within the next couple of years for your homestead, and where is it that you want to be like in your incremental stages?
Right. So in the next couple of years, we want to build our house. We want an adobe house. We don't want a large house. Since we've been living in 400 square feet, we think 600 square feet would be everything that we need. So we want to build our house, and we have a goal of being 95% self-sufficient, which
Okay.
means with our food. We're already self sufficient with the electricity, the water, the sewage, but now we're concentrating on the food. So we want to get some ducks. We want to get some sheep for lamb. Um, and I'm an equestrian. I've been riding horses. I was involved in the Black cowboy community in Atlanta
Okay.
for most of my childhood. So I want to get horses and mules. So in order to do that, you have to have good fencing. So we have
Mm-hmm.
so many projects that we're working on, but we had to really prioritize in the beginning. Our infrastructure was the first priority. Now we're moving on to the food. And
Okay.
the reason why I say 95% self sustainable is because I still have luxury things that I want to buy at the grocery store. You
Mm-hmm.
know,
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to necessarily have to make my own butter, but I want to be
Okay.
able to make my own butter if I needed
Right.
to.
Right. Right.
But I want to be able to go to the grocery store to buy, some things, but still be prepared to be able to be 100% self-sustainable.
That makes sense. That makes a lot of sense.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. So talk about. I want you to share the work that you're doing, so that viewers are aware of everything that you're offering. So you've got your sage that
Mm-hmm.
you sell. What else are you doing so that people know how to reach out to you and connect with the work that you're doing?
So I have a Patreon where I share exclusive videos on all kinds of things that you need to know about off-grid life, about being prepared, um, just prepping in general, food prep in the case of an emergency, things that are going on in our life. Because once my page really, the IG page really just blew up in a very short amount of time. And I was not prepared for the negative people, the evil people, the comments. I wasn't prepared for all of that. So I had to figure out what I was going to share, what I wasn't going to share. And I wanted to have a safe space to share. So that's why I
Yeah.
decided to do the Patreon. Because even on YouTube, anybody and everybody who's seeing that they don't care about you, they're not supporting you, you know, they can leave all kinds of comments. And I wanted to
Hmm.
be able to share a lot of things with people who are genuinely interested, you
Right.
know, and
Right.
genuinely want to support me. So
Right.
that's why I started the Patreon. And then from that, I began doing off grid courses. I did my first one called Preparing Your Mindset, which basically explains what off grid is, what to expect, what skills you need to have, what mentality you need to have to be successful for off grid life. Because there's a lot of different things that if you don't totally understand, you know, conserving power, just so many things, if you don't understand and you take the leap to get into this lifestyle, you might be really disappointed and you might decide this isn't for me after you've already spent time, energy, and money. So that was the first one that I did. And now I'm finishing up the second one on buying off grid property, because people don't understand that you can't go off grid everywhere. You know, it's not
Hmm.
legal. You will
Hmm.
not be allowed to. You know, there's so many things in place. And there's so many things that you need to look for and you need to know before you buy land, because I'm doing consulting also, one-on-one consulting, for people who want to get into this lifestyle. And I've had people who bought land already, and after I've worked with them and I've done research on the county and stuff, they realize they can't live in an RV. You know, they can't be disconnected from the power grid. They have to be connected to the sewage system or the water system in that particular county. So I felt like it was very important for me to be able to provide this information so people can actually realize their dream and not do something wrong and it just totally sabotages them.
Yeah. Yeah. It's surprising to me. Well, I mean, you talked about a couple of things. The trolls and the negatives and the haters. It's
Mm-hmm.
unfortunate that social media allows that space for them, and it's tiring.
Mm-hmm.
I deal with that a lot. I deal with a lot of, the racist comments. What, why are you talking about black things, and why, and it's tiring. But there's also, I feel like there is work that has to be done, and if I'm not talking about it, who is going to talk about it? And so,
Mm-hmm.
um, did the system mute? Can you still hear me?
Oh, can you hear me?
Uh-oh, hang on.
Yep.
Something happened. Bear,
Let me see. Okay, can you hear
bear
me?
with me. I don't know what happened. Can you hear me now? It just
I
said
can hear
system
you.
mute, and I don't know why. Bear, hold on.
Okay.
Can you hear me now?
You're very low.
Can you hear me?
Yep, now I can. Can you hear me?
System on audio unmuted. I don't know what happened.
Okay,
It decided to mute. I'm glad it unmuted itself. Oh my God.
right.
Um,
So what I was gonna say was, with Instagram, I had to figure out how to preserve my peace from people. So what I found
mhm.
out is there's a setting where you can only allow your followers to comment on your
Okay.
stuff, and that saved me so much. Oh my goodness. It took away the anxiety having to deal with people. It really made it a lot better.
And the unfortunate thing is, like, people don't know like with YouTube, as I get notifications of the comments that are coming in, it's almost like I'm holding my breath each time to read the comment to see how it's going to go and what I, how I have to defend myself, how I have to block this person, how I have to respond. And it's just, but you also know I am doing some valuable work. I'm sharing some valuable information. And so it's a weird space to be in where sometimes it's like I don't have time for this. Like I could just sit over here and mind my business
Right. Mind my business.
and not have to deal with this. But then you also
Right.
know that you would be doing a disservice to some of the people who really want to know and learn. So it's a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And it is especially for introverted people, because there's sometimes like I'm like, okay, I need to shut this down because it becomes overwhelming.
Right.
And for I am going to share all of your ways to connect with you, with the ways to connect, in the description of the video, but I wanted to give you an opportunity to talk about it, for sure. And I one of the things, like the other thing that you were talking about was how people will just set out and they don't do their research, and that is always surprising, and sad to me, even in the tiny house movement, because those are the people who will strike out and they're just don't do any of the research, and then they come back and they're hit with obstacles, and then they're
Right.
bad mouthing the movement or whatever. But no, it's really because you didn't do the pre-work to make sure the direction you were headed in was the proper direction, or you didn't consult with people who could have helped you guide you in that direction, or you expected that those people, this, and we had this conversation going into this conversation, you're not willing to put in the money into investing with consulting and going to workshops and the people who
Yes.
have the knowledge, who are doing the things, but you're not willing to spend the money, or you expect that they should just give you something for free. So it's a lot.
Mm-hmm. It's a
It is a
lot.
lot.
It definitely is a lot.
So the
So
resources that
yeah,
you're offering, go
I'm
ahead.
trying to get the word out there and show people and tell people. But what I realized is a lot of people don't know how to research. It's not just that they're not researching, they don't know how to research. They don't know what to look for. One of my clients was like deathly afraid of calling the county planning and zoning to ask questions. So I did all that for her. So there's different things that impede people, but I really feel like people do not know how to research. And when you're not seeking out the counsel of people who've already done it, there's going to be a lot of things that you miss.
Yeah.
Because in my journey, I was just doing the research, and I realized a lot of things after we had already purchased the property and started. Thank God none of those things were detrimental or obstacles, but I have learned so much, and I have so much knowledge and so much to give and to help people. But like you said, everything comes at a fee. I had an IG growth coach, and that's the reason why my IG is at more than 80,000 followers. We grew, I think, 78,000 followers in 6 months because I paid a large amount of money to an IG growth coach to learn exactly what I was supposed to be doing. And people have to know that they have to invest in themselves in
It
order to be
takes money to
successful.
make money, absolutely, or it
Right,
takes spending money to get where you want to go, absolutely. That's important. That's an
right.
important thing to pay attention to, and to note that it's just not going to magically happen without work and without effort and without sometimes spending some money.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Definitely.
You said something else that completely there was a thought that I wanted to talk about, and something you just said, and I it totally slipped my mind. Um, hopefully it'll come to me. It was, I think it was kind of important. What would the title of your autobiography be?
Whew, I don't know. I've never thought about that. Navigating life in a uncertain world. I don't know.
I like that.
Trying
Navigating
to
life.
find freedom, overcoming the fake American dream. I don't know. There's lots of different titles.
The elusive American dream. Absolutely. Absolutely. I know what it was when
Mm-hmm.
you were saying people who don't know how to research. I'm going to go back don't know how to research, and the woman who is
Mm-hmm.
actually scared to call the county. One of the things that has stuck with me growing up and in this movement, because sometimes it is daunting, and I even share, like, I look at my counterparts in this movement, and I know, as a black woman moving through this movement, my journey has been different from my counterparts. And I know
Mm-hmm.
my counterparts are used to operating in just, moving through the world in just a way of, with an expectation that I can't have as a black woman. And that's real.
Right.
Um, but one of the things that I've had to push myself in sometimes, having these conversations, the tough conversations, my mother used to always say, kind of like in dealing with people that maybe were intimidating or something daunting. And I think my glasses are crooked. She'd say something like, they put their pants on just like you. And it was kind of like, they are the same person. Like, maybe you're assigning too much authority or too
Mm-hmm.
much something to them,
Mm-hmm.
but they put their pants on just like you. And that, I think she used to
Right.
say that when we were like when I was like 5 or 6. And it's funny to me, like, that's one of the things that has stuck with me. And sometimes I'll have to even say that to myself, they putting their pants on just like you. And so they are
Mm-hmm.
just somebody that you always can have that conversation with. But I always tell
Mm-hmm.
people, even in researching, like dealing with the county officials, call down there and don't give them any information. Don't tell them your name. Don't tell them your property
That's
address.
exactly what
You
I told her. They don't have to know anything. Just ask your questions.
just ask your questions. The last thing you want to do is give up all the game, because sometimes you might say no, and I might still need to go in that direction and do it anyway. So I'm not getting ready
Right.
to
Tell
um
you who I am, where I'm planning to
exactly.
be, and everything that's going on with me. One thing I had to teach my husband when dealing with officials, when dealing with the county, when dealing with, only give them the information that they ask for. Don't give them any more information. And sometimes you don't even give them the information that they ask for if you don't have to.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Don't give up the game, too much game, if you don't have to.
Mm-mm.
I
Nope.
agree with that 100%. What is one question I didn't ask that you wish I had asked?
Hmm. Oh, so what a lot of people want to know is how we feel being Black in New Mexico. One of the
Okay,
reasons
thank
why
you.
we did not want land in the South is because it's the South. It has a Confederate history. If you're, being in Atlanta is one thing, being 45 minutes outside of Atlanta is
Oh,
a
yeah.
whole different world,
Yeah.
and with everything that was going on politically in 2020, we did not want to put ourselves in a position to be victims of whatever may happen. New Mexico is very different because there's not a lot of Black people here, but they don't have the same history of slavery, which means they don't have the same history of racism. And even if you look up New Mexico, it says like a large majority of New Mexicans are white, but they're Hispanic.
Okay.
There's not like a ton of white people here. There are, but it's more Hispanic and natives.
Okay.
So we felt safer here than we did in the South. Even though we don't see many people like us, it's not the same
It's
vibe.
not the underlying current. It's not
Right.
the underlying current. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And that's important. I talk about that a lot. And with as I get the comments, it's like, why are you always talking about racism? Or somebody who told me, my mindset is what brings racism to me. Okay, oh yeah, all right, that's not how racism works, but whatever.
No,
Um,
no.
that is a big thing. And I have shared several times that I have had to move my home twice because of, I'm in North Carolina, a seat a seat of racism,
Mm-hmm.
and I have had to move my house twice because of safety concerns associated with racism, and
Yep.
so that is a real concern. It is a real safety concern. It is one of the things that, as people are saying, where can I put a tiny house? on top of where can I put a tiny house, just from the rules perspective. On top of
Mm-hmm.
that is from my perspective, from a Black person's perspective, where can I put a tiny house and be safe because of issues with racism and safety concerns, because rural areas and RV parks are the most accepting, but they're
Mm-hmm.
not the most safe spaces. And so that
Right.
that thought process of being in an area that doesn't have a history of enslavement is absolutely smart. And it is necessary for the thriving, for the not for us to, as Black people, to be in spaces where we're not just tolerated, but we are happy and
Embraced.
thriving and embraced and comfortable. And that's a big difference.
Mm-hmm.
And that goes a long way for your mindset and your health,
Your
because
peace of mind.
absolutely. And when and the health benefits, because all of that is tied together. um
Mm-hmm.
and so it's a necessary conversation, and I love that was part of the decision making. And
Yeah.
I hope that inspires someone else to, in that thought process of looking for locations, because you're right, the South, Atlanta, I've lived in Atlanta for many years, lived in North
Mm-hmm.
Carolina for many years, and when I feel safe on the property that I am, but once I leave out of this property, there is the riding down the road. I've had to stop and take pictures of some of these flags that I see so that I can Google them,
I
because
know.
I know they mean something to everybody
Mm-hmm.
else around. I need to Google it to know what it means. And
Mm-hmm.
the thought process of not going in certain areas at night, because I'm by myself. The thought process of making sure I have enough gas, making sure I'm not going to have car trouble, because I don't want to be in these areas
Mm-hmm.
at night, or with car trouble, or having to depend on these people to assist me. And then they'll say, especially with the Confederate flags, they're some of the nicest people, but that flag has a history, and
Mm-hmm.
that history is of detriment to me as a Black person. So
Which
you
means
might
I'm
think
gonna steer clear. I don't care how nice
exactly,
you may be. I'm
exactly,
gonna steer clear.
exactly. That's exactly what that means. So when I leave from this property, there is an awareness that I have to have, having personal protection, having a gun, because I can't
Mm-hmm.
talk no more. At some point, I have to be able to protect
To
myself. So
defend
it is
yourself.
to defend myself, and it is a different mindset and awareness that it's tiring to have,
Yeah.
and
And I don't
some
feel that here.
that's
I
and
don't
that's
feel that
beauty.
here. And that is such a weight to be lifted off of your everyday experiences and encounters. Like you know, I wish more people would see, yeah, it's easier to grow food in the South. However, that peace of mind and
Yeah,
not having to think about that is it's priceless to me.
yeah,
Priceless.
yeah. And I know what that feels like. It's one of the reasons I enjoy being outside of the country. It's one of the reasons, like, I enjoy traveling, like being in Cartagena in South America, in Colombia, and being in Panama, where it's like, oh my, they are
Mm-hmm.
embracing Black people and brown people, and not having been in that environment, you don't recognize the weight that you feel lifted off of you when you're
Whew,
not
I know.
always having to be concerned about your Blackness and how that is going to be received. and
Effect.
and and and
Mm-hmm.
yeah, and that's real. Thank you for that.
It
that
is.
was that was
Mm-hmm.
excellent. I didn't think to ask you that, and I thank you for sharing that.
Mm-hmm.
um Let me see, there was a question. I know you talked about the type of house that you all plan to build. Someone asked about an earth ship. And
I get that question a lot. Why
okay,
not an earthship?
okay,
One of the reasons, before we moved off grid, I was just in love with earthships. I wanted an earthship. We don't, I passed by the earthship biotexture community so many times, and I've stopped and I've seen them. The thing about earthships is it takes so much time to collect all those tires, to collect all those materials. It's
okay,
almost a full-time job just to get the materials collected to build it. On top of that, they are so labor intensive. They're more labor intensive than they have to be. But a lot of the biggest thing about earthships is geothermal mass and heating, which you can obtain with doing an adobe house. An adobe house, you can use the dirt from your land to make bricks, and it's less time consuming than doing the earthship with collecting the tires, and then you have to tamp down the tires and fill them with dirt. Earthships are cool, they're awesome, but I don't think they're the best use of time, money, or resources.
Gotcha.
So I'd like to have an adobe with some of the same aspects of the rainwater collection, the recycling of water, the greenhouse on the front to grow food. I want to have all those, the great things about earthships in an adobe home.
Okay. That makes sense. That makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
One of my next projects is working on my travel trailer. Once I thank you for that answer. Once
Mm-hmm.
I have like a couple more projects around here, so I'm gonna make my way out to visit you in New Mexico.
Oh yeah, come on out.
And then we have to meet up when you are back on this side in Atlanta.
Mm-hmm.
What else? Anything else? I'm checking to see if there are any questions that we might be able to address. And I didn't see anything. I think we've talked about everything. Was there anything else that you wanted to share before we adjourn this conversation?
I just want everybody to consider an alternative lifestyle and know that the cookie cutter status quo is not the only option. That there are other options out there that are going to feed your soul, that are going to be fulfilling, and that are going to make more sense financially. But if you do decide to do that, make sure you do your research so you're not sabotaging yourself, and know everything that you need to know about it.
I love that. I keep saying the soul part, the feed your soul. Like I always talk about it in several of my videos. I've spoken about how, people would just say, I could never do that, or like when I was saying I was going to build a tiny house and people just thought I was crazy. There are
Oh, me too.
so many things out here that just aren't within people's realm of imagination,
Mm-hmm.
that they think is weird or crazy or whatever. But then when other people do it, you realize there was a soul decision, there was some peace, there was some liberation that
Mm-hmm.
person saw in pursuing the difference versus this cookie cutter, like as you said, this cookie cutter American dream that is so elusive to Black and brown communities. And it is so elusive to everyone basically, unless you're in that
Yeah, because
that
I
small.
was just reading so many articles about how the middle class is shrinking.
Absolutely.
There's going to be no middle class soon. And the middle class now is nothing like the middle class of our parents who were able to buy a house and have a car, without an education, without having those student loan debts, and they were able to actually thrive and going on vacations. And that's why I say the American dream is bullshit. It's some bullshit
Absolutely.
because you know we had a nice house, between me and my husband we were making $100,000 a year, but you can never get ahead. It's always something. Always the debt is overwhelming. It's such a heavy burden. And like I said, my parents at 70 are still working, and my dad's a physician. you know so
Yeah.
they have the American dream, but the thing is, the American dream is some bullshit. So you have
Yeah.
to find an alternative, unless you want to work till you're 65 or 70 and not really be able to live. You have to do something different, because doing it the way they say is not going to get you anywhere. It's just going to get you in more debt, more stress. I have so much less stress and anxiety being here. Like I said, we were making good money. I still always felt the stress of, we need more. Do we have enough? It was still always stressful. But here, I know that even if we had no money, we would be fine.
Hmm.
So it's just, there's so many aspects of this life that have totally changed, you know, um, my stress level, the way I interact. And I want people to know that you don't have to have $150,000 to start to do it, because, I have this reel where it talks about everything that we spent money on. You can do it on a smaller budget, and you can do it over a longer period of time. We set everything up in less than a year because we had all the funds there from the sale of our house. But it doesn't have to be done that way. There's so many ways that it can be done, and not having a huge lump sum of money. So I don't want that to discourage people.
Yeah. And I think that is also a big part of the conversation, because I've had the people who come and will look at um, pictures of my tiny house, and or when I say I paid, $85,000 out of pocket to build a tiny house, and then they'll be like, "Oh, well, that counts me out because I don't have $85,000." I didn't say I wrote a check for one
Right.
big check for $85,000. Did you ask me how I got to that $85,000? Did you, how did I get to that number? But you've
Right.
counted yourself out before you've even done the research or to ask me how to get to that. And I feel like so much of that mindset, that scarcity mindset, is part of our community and part of people's psyche, where they will already count themselves out without looking into it and determining the options and the resources and the ways to navigate to get to where they want to be. And I think the key thing that you keep talking about is thriving. It is just not being in a place of you know
Survival.
survival. It is thriving. It is the weight
Hmm.
that is lifted off of you as you're living where you're living. It is the anxiety that you no longer have. It is the ability
Hmm.
to spend the time with your son, and what he's
Hmm.
learning. And there's so much to be said for that mindset and that piece.
Yep. Yep. And part of
Yeah,
the problem is people don't have patience. A lot of people want to jump into things overnight. And sometimes it's going to take you 2 to 3 years to build that tiny house, to get the money to do it. But you have to start somewhere,
yeah,
because the first thing you bought was the trailer bed, right? So
absolutely,
you buy that trailer
absolutely,
bed
absolutely.
and you work from there, and you do it little by little as the money comes. But, thinking that you're going to be able to get it done right away, all the way, is what stops people. You just have to start. The hardest thing about a lot of things is just
It's
starting.
starting. Absolutely. And before buying that trailer, just like what you talked about, there was a year and a half, almost 2 years of research, so that when I
Research.
bought the trailer, I knew what I was doing with buying the trailer,
Mm-hmm.
and then stacking it from that point forward with knowing what I needed to do and how. So absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
And then now, people don't have to go into that route. Back to your point of people don't know how to research. There are people out here who are living it, who are doing it every day, that can
Right.
help you navigate it, so that you're not just reinventing the wheel, or starting
Mm-hmm.
and heading towards failure.
Yeah, because people don't want to spend a little bit of money, but not even thinking about they could, risk thousands and thousands of dollars with the mistake of not knowing something.
Absolutely, absolutely. I thank you so much for this conversation today. As always, I get to share, as I was trying to decide when to host the conversations. And I thought about Sundays. I felt like it would be a soul conversation, and that's what
Mm-hmm.
Sundays always are for me. And so I have to say yet again, that thank you so much, because that has been exactly what this conversation was. And I appreciate you sharing your time and your knowledge with everyone in your journey. And it has been a pleasure to connect with you. And for everyone watching, all of her contact information will be in the description of the video. So don't ask how you can get in touch with her. Look in the description of the video. Um, all of that information will be there, if you're interested in working with her and connecting and learning how to make this journey your own. And so we are going to close now. Again, thank you so much
Thank you so much for
for
having me.
absolutely. So this again has been the Creating Home, a tiny house series, and this is the conversations on intimate spaces. Every Sunday, I am offering this content at 12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Um, and I hope that if you find this information um, interesting or of value, I'm asking that you like the video, that you share it, that you tell your friends about it, that you are joining us on Sundays and subscribing to the channel to get the notification so that you'll know when live content is happening. So I thank you so much, and we'll talk soon. Have a great day,
Thank
everybody.
you.
Thank
You
you.
too.